This is a special interview edition of the Soundcast. I am your host, Christopher Coleman, and today I speak with composer Jamie Christopherson about his work for the recently released video game, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. This interview was recorded on February 28th, 2013, and I talk with composer Jamie Christopherson, whose credits include the Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth series, Lost Planet 1 and 2, and Lineage 2, about his work on his most recent video game project, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. We also talk about why he's not doing Lost Planet 3, and his first foray into television series composing with his work alongside Christopher Lennertz on NBC's Revolution. So sit back and enjoy this interview edition of the Soundcast with Jamie Christopherson. Yeah, I was surprised to and excited to see your name attached to Metal Gear Rising. And that's what I want to ask you the most questions about today. But just before we go to that, though, I was very disappointed to see that your name wasn't attached to Lost Planet 3 when I heard about that, towards the end of last year. Were you ever even in the mix there, or did they just decide, hey, we're going to go a whole different direction with the third installment?
I never got contacted for that one.
Oh, wow.
I think what happened was that Capcom farmed out the production of it.
Yeah.
I forget who the game studio was, but it was a U.S. game development company.
Right.
And so it wasn't an internal, and I have a great relationship with Capcom. And so I think since they went outside of Capcom for that, I didn't know the development house.
I see.
For that, and the guys over there. So I think they just went with their guy.
Yeah. I think Jack Wall is doing it.
I think so too. I think, didn't it come out already, or is it coming out soon?
I think it's coming out pretty soon. But I haven't seen a big marketing push for it yet. Maybe it's been squashed by some of these other, like your game and BioShock Infinite and all these which are about to come out. So I don't know. I don't think it's out yet though. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, he certainly did well with Call of Duty Black Ops 2. That's for sure.
Right.
I think he's probably pretty happy with that. So
yeah.
But yeah, I was disappointed. I loved Lost Planet 2. I know it kind of got mixed reviews, but I loved it from day one. And I still love it to this day. It's still a really beautiful game.
Yeah, I know. Kind of did get panned by critics, didn't it?
Yeah, which surprised me because I thought, I mean, it's so gorgeous to look at. The art direction for it, and the gameplay is fun. I never could finish it; it was too tough. So I go back to it every once in a while to try to finish it, but I haven't gotten there yet. 2 years later, or 3 years later. But let's talk about some of the things you are working on. I was surprised to see your name attached to Revolution with Christopher Lennertz. I had no idea you were working with it. I knew Christopher Lennertz was doing it, but I didn't know you were also on that.
Yeah, well, I'm just helping him out with additional music when he, we have a lot of minutes a week. So it's his show. It's Chris' show, and I'm just supporting him when he needs it.
Okay.
With some additional music, and we're actually just about to start up the second half of season 1.
Oh, nice.
And excited about that because we have a mini orchestra every week, which is about 20 musicians here in LA. So over at Warner Brothers usually.
Right. Have you worked with him before?
Well, I don't know if you know, but I'm over at his studio in El Segundo.
I did not know that.
Yeah, him and Tim Wynn made a really cool studio over here in El Segundo.
Okay.
And so there's a bunch of us composers over here. There's like 9 of us.
Okay.
So there's like 9 composing rooms, and I met Chris a few years ago when we were in Ubeda together in Spain.
Okay.
And our families really hit it off, and our daughters are really good friends, and then so we just kind of have similar styles and things like that. And yeah, so it's
Nice. So is it? It's still called Sonic Fuel. Is
yeah,
it still
that's the
Sonic Fuel?
studios. Yeah.
Okay. Now, because I think he was still. Maybe he's moved again since then, but it was several years ago. I met up with him there, but I think it was in Santa Monica,
It was probably Marina Del Rey.
Marina Del Rey. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, and
Yeah,
now it's moved.
they totally built like a whole new studio
Okay.
over here.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right. Awesome. I did not know. That's awesome. I have to come and visit you guys
Yeah.
sometimes.
No, it's really awesome. There's like a live room that could fit about 30 strings
Okay.
and a nice big mixing console, the Euphonics board
Yeah.
there. So it's pretty awesome.
Okay. Oh, well, that's great. That is really great. I had no idea. I had no idea. Well, let's talk then about Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. How in the world did you find yourself so fortunate to be connected to this
I know.
release?
Well, as I've done a lot of games with Japanese clients.
Yep.
And so Platinum Games being Japanese, and I think that they're familiar with some of the work that I had done out there, especially with Capcom.
Yep.
And so they actually came to Sound Deluxe and wanted a whole package deal as far as sound effects, voiceover, music, and so they requested that I be a part of the game
Okay.
as well. So yeah, it just worked out really well,
Okay.
timing wise, and the fact that we did, everything, from sound and everything. So I would be passing them files back and forth, and they, the sound effects guys could hear what frequencies I was using and to kind of work around that, and vice versa. Yeah, it was cool.
So, was this after? Because reportedly, Hideo Kojima put the brakes on the project at one point a couple of years ago, and before Platinum Games got involved. So I assume you weren't involved until after the restart of that project.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Until after Platinum was pretty well into it.
Okay. So did you have any direction from Hideo Kojima yourself, or did it all come through Platinum?
It all came through Platinum, although Hideo Kojima, it is a dual production, so everything had to get approved by their camp.
Okay.
But as far as my dealings were mainly with Platinum.
Okay. Well, when you came onto the project, obviously you're aware of the franchise. I mean, it's been around since the late '90s. Was that a big burden or a big weight, or the history of it all? Especially, the music's pretty well known. It's a beloved franchise. How did that play into your taking on this project?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little intimidated at first. It's just such a huge video game franchise, and I just didn't know, or I didn't want to let fans down,
Mm-hmm.
And it has such a memorable theme and a sound to it. That being said, when I started talking to Platinum, I found out pretty quickly that they didn't want to use the theme from the previous games,
Mm-hmm.
and B, they wanted to go in a different direction with the sound altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Since it was a hack and slash game, they wanted to go more towards hard heavy metal and electronica instead of the kind of James Bond spy kind of sound.
Right.
So then I was like, okay, it's a reinvention of this, so I could totally take a stab at that, and still try and tie it to the Metal Gear universe, but come up with something totally different.
Yeah. Well, I was surprised when I found out it was going that direction. Just assuming that it would kind of carry over the same stylistic characteristics as those that preceded it. But so did that then? Was that kind of freeing for you or liberating for you? Is this a style of music you've written for before and you enjoy writing for, or when you got that note to saying, "Hey, we're going a different direction. Don't worry about what's come before. Let's do this."
In a way, it was freeing as far as I didn't have to live up to the orchestral theme, the big sweeping, orchestra that Harry Gregson Williams did.
Mm-hmm.
And they specifically wanted me to not use that.
Okay.
So in a way, that was freeing, and in another way, it was it had its own huge challenge in that I'd never really written tons of heavy metal music before. I've
Right.
done I've done a few pieces of music here and there, but not a whole score. And I mean, this is basically like I had to write a whole album of heavy metal music
Yeah.
in addition to 2 hours of score or something like that.
Yeah.
And
How,
so that was, then I had to figure out how to actually pull that off and sound convincing, without just totally sounding like faking it.
right. Right. Well, it's pretty convincing. I mean, it feels. I mean, it feels like the real deal. When I listen to it. So I think you succeeded there. Not that I wouldn't call myself an aficionado
Hmm.
of that genre, but at least what my ear can detect is like, yeah, that sounds like the real deal. What about you just mentioned the amount of music? How tough was that? I mean, a full score, and then you have all of these quote unquote songs. Well, not quote unquote, they are songs. How did you manage to squeeze all of that in? How much time did you have to write, I guess?
I mean, I was on the project for a little over a year,
Okay.
so it was a long production period. Just like all video games, it would kind of come in phases and then go away for a little while. But
Mm-hmm.
as far as my length of time with the songs, is probably at least 6 months,
Wow.
6 to 8 months on the 13 songs, and just because we recorded everything live, and we had to have auditions for singers and have recording sessions, and then remix the tracks, and then re-remix them, and it, just collaborate with a lot of people,
Yeah.
work on the lyrics, rework on the lyrics, just to get it perfect.
Right.
So it was nice to have the luxury of time with the songs.
And it's interesting how the songs are used. It's not just like the song just comes on and plays, but you have those low intensity versions, the mixes, the instrumental versions, which these all take place during the boss battles, if I understand correctly. And it builds from those lower intensity instrumental versions into the actual vocal version.
Yeah, and that's actually part where Platinum, and specifically the music director there, Naoto Tanaka, who he's a genius with the coding stuff. So he is definitely to congratulate for coding the stuff to really pop like that. And
Mm.
I don't think my score would have as much impact if he didn't come in and code it the way he did, where the vocals, yeah, just pop in right at the crux of battle
Yeah. Yeah.
right there. And I looked online, and fans always comment on that, how like right when they're about to do something really cool, the vocals kick in and step it up a notch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's something I knew that he was going to do, and so we wrote the songs in a way that they could be chopped up into kind of song segments, and he certainly had 10 stems of surround sound that we specifically did, so he could do that and have control over coding.
Now, I've never heard of that being done before. Specifically with, I mean, obviously they're mixing in different stems at different points and different beats of the game, or even battles. But kicking in vocals like that, has that ever been done before, to your knowledge?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it's very effective. Very effective, especially in the context of that game.
Yeah, it matches the action of that game pretty well, I think.
Right. So you said that you did auditions to find the different vocalists and artists you work with. I mean, were there any that you just knew, like, they've asked me to do this, I know exactly who I want to work with, or was it all just wide open and you just went through the process?
It was pretty wide open as far as, I didn't have tons of ties to the heavy metal scene for musicians and things like that, and vocalists. So yeah, I had to go through a learning curve with getting introductions into that world.
Mm-hmm.
The client had a few. There's a guy at Platinum Games. His name is JP, and he's very knowledgeable about music. And so he had a lot of friends actually in the music business that he recommended, and a lot of them actually ended up in the game. Like a girl named Free Dominguez. She sings one of the songs for Mistral, and Tyson Yen from a band called Drist. And so he also ends up in the score. And then I also collaborated with a electronic music producer slash DJ named Ferry Corsten. And you would have never thought, like, from the beginning, like, how are we going to collaborate? Because he does, like, house trance music. And, you know, we're doing a heavy metal score, and how does that really work together?
Yeah.
But JP introduced us together. I went to one of his shows, and we got along really well, and he was very cool and open to collaboration. And so that kind of sums up how this project went. People were, like, really open to working with me, and we just experimented a lot, which is fun. And who knew whether the collaboration would really work, but it kind of came out with a cool track, you know, from working with him. And so every song is kind of full of those things and collaborators.
So which, you said you've been on this for about a year. Did you write some of the score pieces first? Because listening to both the vocal track release and then the release that came with the collector's edition of the game, the actual score release, you know, they blend very well together. So how did you go about that? Did you write the score pieces first and then base the songs on those, or the other way around, or what?
Basically vice versa. We did the songs first.
Okay.
Because we knew that they were going to be the most important thing in the game.
Yep.
And so even wrote the songs before I had a main theme, because each boss was to have their own theme. And so the boss songs are written from the perspective of the boss.
Okay.
So the lyrics are kind of saying what's going through their mind and how they got there and all that kind of stuff. So each boss, has its own kind of theme and melody and all that.
Okay, interesting.
And then when I would get into the score, slowly over time, you know, kind of a real simple theme came to me for Raiden, and and then you could hear that mostly in the cutscene music.
Right.
Not so much in the boss battles, except for towards the end, you could hear little hints of it when he's battling some of the last bosses.
Okay. Now you guys had a kind of a special launch party back around the 18th.
Yes.
How did that go?
I mean, it was when we got there. I mean, it was great. They invited us to perform a lot of the soundtrack live. And I'd never, really rehearsed with a metal band, and so it was fun. And we brought a lot of the vocalists up, and they did film some of it, and I noticed that some of the recording was not the best. I mean, if you were there, you would hear it was just so loud. Like, we performed at the Hard Rock Cafe, and it just was not set up to handle the volume level that we were playing at. And
wow.
The fans just loved it. They were just totally loving it. It sounded great when you're in the venue, but to record it, and I think there are some recordings online, it just didn't come through as, so.
Oh, I see.
I wish that the venue was a little bit better for recording and audio, but as far as a launch party, it was great. The fans really enjoyed that we put a live show together.
So what instrument did you play?
Keyboards.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Had you ever done anything like that at a launch before?
Not at a launch specifically. I used to play in bands when I was in high school and a little bit in college. Not heavy metal bands, but some rock bands and stuff like that. So it had been a while since I'd been up on stage, and the guys that I perform with, I mean, do it for a living, and so they're up there headbanging, and I definitely got into it a little bit, the headbanging, but not quite as much as they do.
Right. Awesome. Now, so the score is available in the collector's edition. Do you think there will be some sort of release outside of that of the score?
Well, there's the score is in the special edition, right. And then all the songs have their own soundtrack.
Right.
Called the vocal track. So there's those 2 CDs.
Right.
I don't think they're planning on releasing the score outside of the limited edition.
Okay.
And there's actually a lot, probably a whole nother album's worth of material from the cutscenes, because none of the stuff on the soundtrack, on the score soundtrack, are from the cutscene music.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that specifically. So go ahead, go on.
Yeah, so it's just because I was composing the soundtrack music up until the last day.
Oh, okay.
Basically. So it was a very tight crunch at the end. Like, just, we were writing like 5 minutes of music a day. I mean, it was very kind of crazy up to the last day. And so it was past the deadline when we could put the stuff on the CDs.
Oh, I see. Okay. So was that the cutscene music that you were working on last?
Yeah, there's cutscene, and I believe that's about it. There's, a cutscene and some trailers, but it's definitely like a whole nother CD worth of material.
Wow.
That maybe we can release at some other point online. Okay. We'll see.
Yeah, I hope so. Because I'm imagining that's probably a little bit more of the more dramatic sort of. Because the score, the collector's edition score, I mean, it's like the vocal album. I mean, it's just driving. For the most part, there's a couple cues, like one at the very first track, and I don't have any track titles, but the very first track, and then maybe like the second to last track kind of has a different tempo anyway, and it starts a little bit more subdued and then builds.
Right.
But most from track to track, it's just on you. It's relentless. It won't let you go.
Yeah, it doesn't make for quite as good of a listen as like a film score.
Well, I mean, if you're into the vocal release, I mean, this is a perfect companion to it. You can play them together quite seamlessly, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, the cinematic music definitely has more of ups and downs and dramatic kind of lilt to it. Yeah.
Right. Well, what else are you working on that you can talk about? I'm
working on a film right now called Born to Race Fast Track. I did a film called Born to Race about 2 years ago, and it did pretty well on Netflix and places like that. And so we're doing the sequel to that. It's it's like Fast and Furious for kids.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What, are they on bicycles or something?
No, they're like teenagers and
Oh, okay.
in college, and so it's cool. It's cool. I mean, it's not quite as out of hand and like the Fast and Furiouses are now. It's kind of
right. Who's the director of that?
It's Alex Ravello. So he did the first one, and he's done one or two other films.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, awesome.
Director. Yeah,
awesome.
And so that, and I'm doing trailer music, and what else? Yeah, just working on Revolution, and just kind of whatever's coming up. I've got a few other games in the works, and
okay. So is Revolution your first foray into TV, or you've done some things on TV before, haven't you?
It's my first series that I've been consistently on. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a pretty big network show, so
sure.
It's fun, fast turnaround, and we're in a good groove now. So.
Well, I know you've got a ton to do. I know your partner's waiting on you, I guess.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the time and catching up and giving us a little bit of an inside glimpse into what went into Metal Gear Rising. Have they talked about I'm not sure, but I'm assuming there's going to be more of this. Have they talked about that at all yet?
Well, I saw an interview online where he expressed interest. Kojima expressed interest, and the game I think is doing really well. So
yeah,
I could only assume probably.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll be looking forward to that for sure.
Looking down on the cars on the highway, stream of taillights, everybody advancing together to so willingly sacrifice rights. When people accept their cogs in the system, give up, free will conform, individual pieces of this world together and become a force storm.
I want to thank Jamie Christopherson for taking time to talk about his recent projects. If you'd like to find the Metal Gear Rising Revengeance song soundtrack, you can do so on iTunes. Also, the game, of course, is available on PS3, on Amazon.com. If you'd like to follow the Soundcast, you can do so by going to Tracksounds.com. You can also find us on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. We'd love to hear what you thought about this interview and our other podcasts as well. You can email us at soundcast@tracksounds.com. Also, feel free to follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/Tracksounds. So that's going to wrap up this interview. I'm Christopher Coleman. Thanks for listening, and may the notes be with you.